Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Kageyama, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to the Cancer Conquering Community. And we are so privileged and lucky to have two amazing speakers today. Uh, the first one, who is right below me, his name is Bill Thach, and Bill is a fellow Texan of mine. He's from the Houston area, and Bill is an ultra marathon runner. And I'm going to let him tell about his story and everything like that. And we talked about it before we got on air here, and so they're going to take questions. Anybody who has a question, just go ahead and ask it, and we'll keep moving along. And the second person is right here to my left, Jonathan Pascual, and he is a triathlete. And I'll let him tell you what he's been on and his experiences and everything like that. But this is an amazing thing. Both of these gentlemen are active cancer patients, and yet they pursue their dreams and do the things that they want to do. And I love that. I love the fact that people still live their lives in spite of cancer and going through cancer treatments. So, what I like to do right now is introduce Bill Thach. Bill, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and your experiences, and then we'll get this great conversation going.
Morning, everyone. My name is Bill Tutt. Just turned 40 last week, so pretty happy about that. I am a neuroendocrine carcinoma patient diagnosed back in November 2018 with the primary in my rectum. Pretty much gone through 9 different lines of treatment, varying from chemotherapy, immunotherapy, targeted therapy, clinical trials, and had a couple surgeries, one major one back in 2021. Um, I've been a patient that has gone through a lot where I've been told 9 separate times where my drugs are no longer working. So it's one of those things where it can easily create some sort of PTSD in your system where you're just constantly looking out for the next option. So that's where I've been. But as of recently, I've been working on my mental health and just using exercise and movement just to help use as a coping mechanism, but at the same time, just learn more about myself, as well as just trying to make my life more positive and uh, more 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 eventful for myself. Just because before I never really took joy in what I did, and now it's completely 180.
Well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Talk about the mental health aspect in how you're using your running to help you with your mental situation.
Before I would use just exercising. It started with walking, then I started cycling, and then I started running. But it was one of those things where it was primarily a distraction in the very beginning. But over time, as I started getting a little stronger and I started going longer, I started noticing a little bit more positive effects of it on on my mind, my body, as well as my overall health and resilience to the treatment I was on. I noticed that even though I have a very aggressive cancer, it's not, it's not. Um, it's not going that direction where we've had stable disease where when I did have progression, it would be minor where it's not typical because typically when a person with my cancer has progression, it just blows up, but it's been manageable. And every time I found another drug that would give me stability or shrinkage, we could kind of reset the clock a little bit more, where I've successfully done that for the past 7 years, but it does get old fast.
I bet. I bet. Talk about, you talked about walking to start. So talk about that progression, how you, and and explain what exactly an ultra marathon is, because I don't think a lot of people know
So walk,
what exactly it is.
I started walking just because that was the only thing I could really do. With my initial diagnosis, I when we were getting all the lab work and the scans done, I lost about 30 pounds in less than a month. And it was at a point where that was really the only thing I could do. So there would be days where I would just want to stay in bed, but then being on high dose steroids along with the chemotherapy caused really bad insomnia. So I'm the type that I can't sit still. So I just basically started walking around the house and around the neighborhood at the weirdest times of the day. And even when I'm on work calls, I'll basically just pace around the house with my headset on.
So go into how you progress. How do you progress from walking around your house to doing an ultra marathon? Talk about that, please.
So walking has always been a staple of my day, but then I sometime in 2019, my dad asked me if I wanted him to ship me his bike because he had a road bike. So I said yes. I was like, I might as well try it just because I have nothing else to do. So he sent it, and then when I started riding the bicycle, it was weird at first just because I haven't ridden a bicycle in years. And then over time, I noticed that I was feeling a lot better. And I started getting into cycling, and then I purchased my own first road bike, and then it just moved from there. Um, I didn't start running until January of last year, just because I was on a clinical trial drug, olaparib, which Jonathan's on right now, and that caused really severe cramping throughout my body. So I did attempt trying to run, but it didn't work out just because my body would just cramp up so badly. So I had to not do that until I was taken off that drug. And then I was on another clinical trial where I just started running in it. I liked it. And then I started running in early January. And then in mid-March of that year, I wanted to do an ultra. I don't know why. Um, and then I did the ultra in April, and it was probably the most painful experience of my life.
Okay, so what is an ultra marathon? Please tell people how long that is, because that's insane.
So pretty much anything beyond a standard marathon, which is 26.2 miles. So the first one I attempted was 50 kilometers, which is about 31 miles. I tried to do one this past Saturday after treatment, but I only made it to 27 instead of the 40. But
Only.
I kind of underestimated the Houston humidity and the temperatures, and I started having chest pain. So I was like, okay, I got to call this off. This is not a smart idea now. So, but then I needed to give myself grace because my friends told me that you just did 2 days of treatment and you ran the very next day. And then another person said, well, you still did 40 plus kilometers. I was like, oh, that's true, huh? So it was basically to celebrate my 40th birthday.
I don't know too many people who'd want to run that distance to celebrate a birthday. I sure wouldn't. I might walk around the block, but that's about as much as I'd want to do. But
I think Jonathan would easily do it.
Uh, Pretty extreme. Yeah, pretty extreme.
Bill, that is amazing. I mean, for anybody who's done chemo treatments, and I'm personally have, the very first round of chemo that I did, I was sick as a dog for 4 days, and it felt like the worst high that you could be on, and it just doesn't leave.
I'm still nauseous right now because I'm still fresh from treatment, so I'm pretty nauseated right now. But
Okay. Yeah, but
exercising
you're
just makes
here.
it go away.
Why do you think that is?
I really don't know. I just know it works. Um, I know ASCO just published a paper on its correlation to colorectal cancer, where it 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 gives you progression-free survival for a fair amount of time if you incorporate an exercise regimen within your daily routine with chemotherapy or before and after surgery. So
That's
that was the
great
link I sent
advice.
you yesterday or the day before that.
I was gonna put it up, and I knew I was forgetting something, so I'll put it up after this because that was gr a great article,
Yeah, it's
really,
like,
really
and
good.
it's great because it has a lot of credibility because it was presented at ASCO, which is the largest conference for oncologists.
Absolutely. That is fantastic. So go ahead, Dr. Gary.
Hey,
You had
Bill,
some.
I'm inspired by your perseverance and your steadfast inspiration. Have you tried ginger powder or any anti-nausea or CBD or anything like that?
None of it works. I've been on 7 different nausea medications. I've done combinations. It really
Yeah,
doesn't work.
and you know Zofran causes constipation, so that's
Well,
not
I'm a double ostomate as well, so constipation is not a good idea for me either.
exactly. Good. I'm glad that exercise has found something for you. That's awesome. Keep it up.
So, Bill, if you could talk about fasting and which how fasting plays a role for you uh, during your chemo treatments.
So I read articles over from Dr. Walter Longo over at USC, and there were papers on the specific chemotherapy treatments I was on, and it also had several arms of patients who did fasting, where it did show a better response. So I told my oncologist that I was going to try it, and majority of the time, oncologists don't like the idea of you saying, I'm not going to eat. So I told them, I basically just said, it's like, well, I'm just gonna do it for this one round, see how it goes. I basically get weighed every week. So I told him it's just gonna be a temporary shift in weight and I'll easily gain it back. And I did that. And there's a stronger bond of trust between the two of us. And I did get progression. I did have a good response where I did have stable disease for about 8 months, which allowed me to have surgery.
Okay, fantastic. I, I can't get over the fact that you said that you only ran 27 miles. I, I think anybody around would say, man, that's pretty spectacular. And so, yeah, we're going to come back to you uh, after we talk to Jonathan a little bit. So thank you for sharing that, Bill. Jonathan, please introduce yourself and share with us who you are, what you do, what your background is. Uh, we're really interested to hear.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Pascual. I am 50 years old. I am married to Monette. We have a 23-year-old son who graduated last year from college. I am a lung transplant nurse practitioner, and I am recently retired at 50. I've been doing my service for the last 25 years at the University of California, San Francisco Medical Center. I have been an endurance athlete for well over 25 years.
Oh, wow.
And what an endurance athlete, I would say, is somebody who goes to athletic events that are, long, maybe distance-wise and time-wise, like marathon. I'm also an ultra marathoner. I have done 100-mile runs, 50-mile runs, and so on and so forth. And I am a triathlete. A triathlon is an event wherein you swim, bike, run in that order, and it has different distances. It could be very short, wherein you swim for 500 yards, you bicycle for 12 miles, and you run for 3 miles. Or it could be the longer distance, which I've done many times, wherein you swim for 1.2 miles, then you ride your bicycle for 112 miles, then you follow that up with a marathon, which is 26.2 miles. Um, Most recently, my 16th Ironman distance triathlon was in the Kona World Championships. So that is an event wherein you actually need to qualify. You can do this Ironman distances all over the world, but to get into Kona, that is what we call the Super Bowl of our sport. So many of us triathletes, that is our dream or our goal to get into that because that's our Olympics, that's our Super Bowl, that's the pinnacle of our sport. Um, I was diagnosed in March of 2022 with mediastinal paraganglioma. Just like Bill, it is also a neuroendocrine type of tumor, but basically the main tumor is in the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system. So like in the nerves, in what's called the paraganglion. And it's right by my heart, and it's invaded the big vessels of the body called the superior vena cava all the way to my neck. It has spread through my lymph nodes, my lungs, and throughout my skeleton. I have primarily done, in the beginning, radiation therapy to shrink the tumor in my chest because it was giving me what's called superior vena cava syndrome. And that's what prompted me to go to the emergency room wherein I was training for Ironman in 2022, but at 1 mile, I was short of breath. And I would wake up in the morning and my face was so bloated. My body was changing. I was getting lean, but my face was just enormous for me. And my neck veins were distended. And what the trigger to go to the hospital was that whenever I get up, I get dizzy and then I actually pass out. I will lose consciousness. Um, the radiation shrunk the tumor a bit. That was followed up what's called radionuclide therapy, wherein the treatment is this medication that's tagged with radiation. But the medication itself binds to specific receptors on the cancer called somatostatin. That's the receptor in the cancer cells. So the medicine binds to that receptor, and then because it's tagged with radiation, the radiation will work over time to try and kill those cancer cells. And to me, that has given me stability. Um, so I pretty much did many different layers of what I think would help me, not just the medicine, but that included nutrition, that included exercise, that included rest, that included many layers of support systems. So all of those to me in cohesion really helped me um, improve while I was achieving stability because as some of you may know, radiation's effects they linger. It's just not that week, it's months or even years later. Um, where I am now is that after I did Ironman Kona, my health took a deep dive in December. I developed clots in my lungs, pulmonary embolism, and clots in the big veins in my arm and in my neck. I actually had to advocate for myself and tell the doctors in my hospital that I said, I've been living with superior vena cava syndrome for close to 2.5 years now, and what's happening here is very acute. This happened within the next last 24, 48 hours. So I can see and I can read what you're reading on the CT scan, and for you to tell me that this is caused by the cancer and there's nothing you can do about it, I don't think so. We'll have to get a second opinion, and that's exactly what I did. And I had connections to the hospital, so we were able to pinpoint the problem that these are acute clots that we can bust this clot. So I went through interventions and medications, and I was able to get out of the hospital. And I just think about if I didn't if I just accepted that opinion that there's really not much we can do about it, then my trajectory would have been very different. So now, um,
Let me pause you right there.
yeah,
That you brought up a huge point, and it's a point that we talk a lot about here in the cancer conquering community. Advocating for yourself. If somebody is telling you something that you're not comfortable with or that you don't believe is the best answer for you, you know, don't hesitate to, search out another solution or another doctor or whatever the case may be. Fight for yourself. Nobody is going to fight harder for you than you. And so that's a great point, and I'm glad to hear that you did that, Jonathan.
yeah, absolutely, Mark. Thank you for I think the self-advocacy can help save your life, and other people's lives. And right now I am in the NIH clinical trial. Like Bill said, I'm the clinical trial that I have is temozolomide, which is an oral chemotherapy, and you add that with the study drug, which is olaparib. It's been approved for use by the FDA. But the question to be asked is that if you use chemotherapy, which destroys the cancer, and then you put in the olaparib, the course of action of the drug is it prevents the cancer cells from repairing its own DNA. Does that actually translate to progression-free survival? Wherein, you have extra time wherein the cancer is stabilized. So that's the question that's being asked by this clinical trial. So in essence, I am on chemotherapy for 7 days, off for 14 days, 7 days on, 14 days off, so on and so forth. So I'm actually gonna resume treatment again, which would be my third cycle next week. And every 6 weeks, I have to go to the NIH. So that's where I am. What I can tell you just to wrap this up is that being
Let me
an athlete,
pause you right there, Jonathan.
yeah,
So you say you're 7 days on, 14 days off. Does that mean you're getting an infusion every day for 7 days?
no, these are all oral
Oh, okay.
chemotherapy drugs.
Okay.
So I think that's one of the beauty that I have seen in my last 25 years being in healthcare is that when I was studying, a lot of the things that you think about, like, okay, you're going to be on chemotherapy, people have this vision of, and it still is, you have certain treatments that's IV and you have to have an infusion, whether it's an infusion center or in the hospital. But to be able to actually get your treatments at home, at the comfort of your home, I think is a big advantage, as far as quality
Mm.
of life. Um, so I had to listen to my body, how I'm responding to the chemotherapy and see the side effects, the expected side effects, and deal with that. And then I realized that within that first week, I said, you know what? Just like the first time around when I was going through radiation and targeted therapy, I never really did stop. If it's just a walk today, I will just walk. If I feel better, then I would just hike. But then after I recovered for a bit, several days after the first cycle, I was back to cycling and I was back to swimming. But again, I am not the athlete where I once was, or not even close to where I was last year in October. This is actually I would say, the most symptomatic I've been in the last 3 years. But I'm still swimming, biking, and running.
We have Dr. Gary who has something to say. Dr. Gary?
Jonathan, God bless you. You're a champion. You're a servant leader. I'm married to a nurse practitioner. I love nurse practitioners, incredibly valuable to the entire healthcare system. So God bless you for your service. I also worked in transplant case management. So with I know how incredibly challenging that is and how compassionate you must be. Um, Talk to me about how your faith has brought you through and how your nutrition made an impact and how you clot busted in December multiple PEs.
Yeah. So three questions I'm going to repeat. Talk about faith, um, talk about the clot busting, and what's the second one?
Nutrition.
Oh, nutrition. Yes. So when I started this, what I call cancer ship, to me, I made it a job. And therefore, the cancer ship had pillars that I need to adhere to. The first one was Western medicine, which what the doctors will tell me to do. You go through these treatments. Then you have those uh, not necessarily alternative medicine, but medications or fruit or things that I think will not hurt me. Like my wife should say, drink this tea or eat these fruits. I welcome that. I have no issues with that. To me, that just shows you that the love and compassion of other people who want to take care of you, they become part of the team. And if that's part of it is eating something that you like, that's second. Third is the exercise. Then fourth is the rest for the fourth pillar. Then you have the nutrition and then the support system. So first, to answer the question about faith, and so I would categorize that under the support systems. I think the responses of people to cancer are as unique as the person. It all depends on your background, religion, culture, the language that you speak, the opportunities that you have growing up, so on and so forth. So for me, for as far as faith, I was baptized in a Methodist church, but my schooling was in a Catholic church. So I know both. And I believe in the power of prayer. I believe in helping people actually action, doing something for people. And part of that is my community, my family and friends offering all of this faith, and that I believe is helpful. Um, I was in Hawaii a few weeks ago, and I responded to this bus accident. Basically, I helped somebody, and I reached out to my community, and I said, "Look, I am a believer of positive energy, healing vibes, energies, and things like those, and prayers." Because I think I benefited from that. So I asked my community, my family and friends, can you please do that for this person? I don't know her. She's a stranger to me. So that's really helpful. So the connections, I believe, are very important. And for you, if you have your religion or your community or that culture and it's faith-based and that works for you, I'm all for it. So the second question is nutrition. Being in the healthcare system and being in transplant, I can see the extreme of people of wherein their nutrition is not is very poor. I've even spoken about to my patients is that, I would consider this a medical emergency, a nutritional emergency, because if you're coming to me to help you get lung transplant, and if you're nutritionally depleted, then you are not going to recover from the treatments. You're already behind. So I've seen over the 25 years how nutrition, like Dr. Gary, you're an expert at this, is medicine, is healing. So that is a very big part of the pillar of my cancer ship. So in a way, a nutritionist came into my hospital room 3 years ago and it said, look, I'm at 155 pounds. I'm at race weight because I was training for Ironman. Usually I'm like 165, even 170. And she said, well, that's great. But I think from now on, you should have a little bit of a buffer. Oh, I said, does that mean I gain a little bit of extra weight because you're all muscle? She said, yeah, and it's okay to have that. And even though a lot of us who go through chemotherapy like I am now, I don't have appetite. But that is part of my cancer ship, part of my job that even though I don't feel like eating, I have to get the calories in, I have to get the protein in. And to me, whatever on the day becomes palatable, it's a meal to me. Okay, that's the meal that I'm gonna have for today, even that just one meal, I'll get it in. So it's very important. And finally, the third one to answer your question, Dr. Gary, I was on TPA, tissue plasminogen activator, which is directly dissolves clots, like the clots in my neck, in my arm, and the pulmonary embolism. And that requires being in the intensive care, and I had to go to interventions and they have to put catheters in my arm and actually take out clots and open up the veins like multiple times during that hospitalization. And now I am on a lifelong blood thinner. Sorry that took so long, Bill. I know you have things to say too, but I wanted to really answer the three questions that Dr. Gary uh, asked.
Not at all. I mean, Jonathan, very eloquent. For everybody that's watching, Jonathan, my wife, um, I've been a registered nurse, a licensed nurse from high school. When you're a patient and you're a healthcare professional like Jonathan and I and several others, it's very different because sometimes we know too much. We know exactly what's going on. Having managing patients, whether they're transplant, and then becoming the patient yourself, um, it does require an incredible amount of patience, understanding. Um, you're hearing things from the conventional medical community that, a lot of them are big pharma textbook. Uh, Sometimes they're theoretical. And like you said so correctly, every patient with every condition is unique. Every response to that condition is unique. Every treatment is not blanketed across all conditions, across all people. The way your body responds to everything, even TPA, is completely unique. So, I think your survivorship and all those on this call that are cancer survivors or going through it, I think your survivorship transcends medical science, and that has a lot to do with your attitude, your support system, your family, your religion, your spiritual nature. What you're doing every day, what you're putting into your mouth, And really, and Mark, and you've all heard this from me, that you, Jonathan, Bill, you are the CEOs of your own health. You make the decisions. Do not, and I'm sure you have not, because you're still here, take what conventional medicine says as a death sentence, right? Because we have conditions, you have conditions, you're with conditions or you've survived conditions that would end anybody's life like that, with either if it's God's will or if your genetics are not consistent with surviving. So it's really a miracle that you're still here, and do not let anybody put a limit on your life because you're the CEO. So good job. I'm so proud of you. Amazing.
Thank you.
So I have a question, and it's a question for both you, Jonathan, and Bill. So you're involved with, like, in Bill's case, long distance running, in Jonathan's case, running, cycling, swimming. So there's a lot of time. I mean, you're doing this grueling, essentially, battle. It's kind of a microcosm of a cancer battle itself. So when you're running or swimming or cycling, you are with your own thoughts. So what do you think about? And I'll go to you, Bill, first.
Really anything. When I'm running or even when I'm cycling, it's one of those things where you kind of shift your reasoning, and then at the same time you remove outside distractions and at the same time external influences. It's basically forced meditation, which really helps you as the individual as well as your mind to endure anything that comes in life. Just because when we look at what our ancestors did, they had no choice but to get through what they did. They had famine, they had war, they had all these different things. But one thing that they didn't have that wasn't a non-negotiable was to keep moving, because to move is to move on and be resilient.
Jonathan, same question.
I would have to approach that as the before and after cancer. How do I approach the movement, swimming, biking, and running when I didn't have cancer and after I had it? Before, it was there's a lot of goal orientation, times, intensity, duration, so on and so forth. You wanted to keep improving, and and that's what I did. And when you're running, swimming, or biking, you, like Bill said, remove all this external things, because sports is an equalizer. You could be of different backgrounds, different um, economic power, but when you're all together doing a running event or a swimming event, like, what, I don't care if you're a doctor, right? I don't care. We're running this, you know. Nature is going to punish us today in 100-mile run. It doesn't care. It will spit you out. It will grind you. So there is this thought of just focusing on what you can control on that day. That's part of being an athlete, is I can focus on my effort. I can focus on what I eat. I can focus on what I drink. I can focus on the intensity of my efforts and preventing problems. Because you know what? You're running a marathon or you're doing a bike ride. You're trying to prevent problems that you, based on your experience, will know will happen. And that only comes with time. But if you're new, just like with any new job or new effort, you're learning. So you'll have to deal with that problem as it comes along. So those are the things that I did before. And now I have to deal with all of those after cancer with side effects, pain, neuropathy, dizziness, near passing out. So now I really have to like reel myself in as far as you know what? I want to keep doing this because I know movement is life, and it brings me a lot of joy. So it's okay for me to, at this point, I can swim for 100 yards and I have to stop, or I can run for 1 or 2 minutes and I have to walk and repeat. And that's one of my superpowers is that I can do monotony, doing things over and over and over again and endure it. And whatever comes to me, I will problem solve. So, in a way, I'm still doing all the things that I was doing as an athlete because that took years, that took over 2 decades, right? But at the same time, I have the grace to be forgiving of, you know what? I've let go of that former self. But however, in that process, I found somebody new who can overcome something much more difficult. So if my younger self actually saw me cross the Kona Ironman World Championship, that in itself is amazing. But to actually go through treatments and dealing with all those symptoms, um, is mind-boggling still when I look back at it. But again, to me, there's a lot of it. Bill knows this that once we start moving, we actually feel better. And sometimes you actually forget about, at least for me, you forget about the cancer. I forget about the pain, all this bone pain. I'm like dealing with, okay, when was the last time I drank? I'm thinking of like the previous athlete, like I'm dealing with what are the things that I need to do to keep going.
I'm going to go to Dr. Gary after this, but I have a question for you. So,
It's Guy that has a question, Mark. Guy has a
oh,
question.
okay. Okay. Guy, we'll go to you. Did you have a question too, Dr. Gary? Or something?
I did after Guy.
Okay. Okay. So you mentioned something fascinating to me is when you're running, you forget about the cancer. But when you're dealing with cancer, you're going through treatment and this is a question for both of you. When you're dealing with your cancer, whether it be an infusion or radiation or whatever it may be, how does your experience as an athlete, as a runner, as a triathlete, how does that play into the way you deal with cancer? Bill.
It reinforces uh, your will to live and to achieve your goals. Just because every time you take on an event that you're scared of, let's just say a marathon, ultra marathon, when you think you can't do it and then you accomplish it, you look back at your treatments and think to yourself, you know what, I did this. So I'm just going to take the same exact approach to this. I know it's going to hurt. I know it's going to be a really bad day, but in the end, I'm going to get through this. And it's just all perspective in the end. I call it inverse PTSD just because individuals who go through treatment, if you've been hospitalized, if you've been in the ICU, if you've needed a blood transfusion, you feel like crap. But you could kind of use that same scenario in terms of the event that you did and correlate that. So I kind of see that where because I'm seeing it as reverse PTSD, I'm seeing that I could do it, and I always try to put that back into frame.
Beautiful. Jonathan?
Thank you, Bill, for that. That's great. I love that response. Um, in 2007, I had a brain tumor. Um, that was removed and I progressed fine, essentially normal, right? But that was at the time that at my son was 4 years old, and I've encountered my mortality many, many times. But that one, having a young wife, a young son, told me that you can die anytime. And that's when I started looking at the philosophy of Stoicism. So I'm a Stoic practitioner. You know, when people hear the word Stoic, they think about some serious guy who like, doesn't express himself, doesn't cry, toughs it out. It's not, it is a very emotional experience and you can express yourself. However, it helped me to one of the tenets of that philosophy is that control the controllables and
What's the name
not
of that,
worry.
Jonathan? What's the name of that philosophy?
Stoicism, Stoic, Stoic philosophy.
Oh, Stoic system. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So essentially, you're not gonna worry too much about the things that you have no control about. If there's something that you can do about it, then those are the things that you put your energy on. So to answer the question, the first thing that I do when I have all these issues, let's say with the chemotherapy that I'm going through, all the side effects, is to have the right perception, you know? And that perception changes over time, right? And you know what? I can actually deal with these symptoms with the help of my team. They say, I'm going to have the side effects, therefore take this other medications to help you deal with those symptoms. However, my perception as an athlete also tells me that, you know what, there are other things that I can do that is beyond the medication, which is I can move, I can rest, um, I can be uh, accepting of the fact that this is where I am now, but I can do something about it. And the second portion of being a stoic is not just is action. You have to have the right perception about it first. Second is the actual doing. So to me, the question I always ask is that, Jonathan, what are you gonna do about it? Like right now, you just feel terrible. You're just been on this couch for hours and hours on end. You know what? You're right. What am I gonna do about it? I'm just gonna walk around and I'll feel better, like around the house. Or I'm gonna go to the garden and start doing things and cleaning and things like those. And now I feel better. So the movement actually lets me be more confident. You see, confidence requires evidence. You need to provide evidence for yourself that you can do something by actually doing the action. So to me, that has always been, you know what, I'm just going to be on my rower today. So that evidence for me that, wow, I did 20 minutes. Maybe tomorrow I can do 20 minutes plus 5 minutes. So I provide that evidence for me. And eventually, the third tenet of the philosophy is will. And this is all heart, all spirit, all mind. When things are just not going your way, then that's when you rely on not only yourself, but the people who are surrounding you, as far as willing you to survive, to keep fighting. So I think that is what really helps people like me who to keep going and not just an athlete, but as a person.
Beautiful. Great answers. Guy, you had something you want to mention?
Yeah, I just want to thank you folks for the information. I mean, I'm not some super hybrid, highly influenced person that, what you guys are describing. A lot of my journey was based on emotion, my mental struggle that I was going through. I think, me not kind of having that information of really kind of double checking, getting second opinions along the way. I mean, I found a lump in my breast in 2000. So I just kind of wandered through life, kind of just basically in denial, kind of not wanting to accept that. And I didn't have a support team around me built at that time because everybody kind of just isolated themselves off. So I spent a lot of time in isolation because I didn't know what to do. The people that was close to me, they didn't know how to respond. But at that time, I think I was just too caught up on people just kind of trying to support me and being there for me. And after a while, I realized that it didn't matter if it was there. Main thing I kind of understood that they might not get it. It's going to take time for them to catch up to what I'm going through. So being on something like this and listening to you guys, I mean, to go and lose 30 pounds and then you're gonna go do something and run a marathon. I mean, you must have lost a lot of muscle and as far as losing all that weight, because kind of that's what happened to me. I drastically dropped weight from 265 all the way down to like 200 pounds in like maybe 6 months. So, I'm looking around like I'm just a trash bag walking around because I realized after that I lost so much muscle from that. So I did lose weight, but I lost muscle weight. So it's hard for me to put it back. I'm 62 years old and I work in the culinary world, so it's very highly toxic and like a violent environment to be in. But yet I know I need to find peace in that struggle. So after a while, I just kind of just started appreciating things and finding gratitude and what was going on. I started to really start to build that support team around me and and goals that's gonna it's gonna keep me like focused on what I was doing and keep that will like you talked about, Jonathan, just kind of being in there when you're under super duress and you're in a storm and yeah, you look outside, it's beautiful, but the storm is within. It's within that kind of understanding that, yeah, we can only control what we can control and we gotta let go of the things that we can't. But just being kind of not knowing where to look, not being educated enough for me personally, like um, being able to sit there and really listen to the information. I mean, I'm all into it now. I mean, because I've learned. I'm 25 years later, I'm still alive. You know what I mean? And even though my diagnosis at the time was like, oh, my life expectancy was 5 years. I mean, here we are, 2025, and so I must be doing something wrong, even though I'm kind of like kind of just aimlessly wandering through life because there's a reason and a purpose for me to be here at this point, and kind of getting on this and it's kind of building that connection and that relationship. It's going to help me to propel myself forward. I mean, I look forward to being a volunteer advocate for hospice because I want to be able to support, the cancer patients, what they're going on, with them, but to give them those numbers of what medicine I was taking, my chemo. What I noticed when I was going through my chemo, I was exhausted after the first or second day. Initially, I was just wiped out. And then, so I was doing an eight treatment cycle, like 1 week on and 2.5 weeks off. And that was brutal for me because I just locked myself in the room. I didn't want to go outside. I was afraid of my immune system was going to get compromised. I lost my appetite. But when I went through my radiation, and I kind of was aware of it. So I was walking, I was getting up to 5 miles a day. So I knew I was going into my radiation. I was like, yeah, I got this. And then after the second or third day, my energy level is just dropping crazy. And I gotta sleep. And I would end up sleeping like 4 or 6 hours just to feel normal again. But and that's the other question is like we're not normal after that. Once we get diagnosed, the new normal is now. Say, that person that walked into the room when I received my diagnosis wasn't the same guy walked out. And I fought with that for a long time. But anyway, just kind of listening to you guys' stories and sharing this valuable information for me, it's huge because that's kind of what I want to do. I want to continue to support and bring cancer to another awareness because you know cancer sucks for all colors of cancer groups that they have it doesn't discriminate to anything. But I'm kind of just being here with you folks and just laughing like, how do you go and go run 27 miles like on your 40th birthday? I can't even remember what I was doing on my 40th birthday, but just walking out to the mailbox on that day was a victory for me. But anyway, I really appreciate what you guys are saying. I'm noting it down as fast as I can. Cancer ship stowaway. It's very helpful information for me. So mahalo.
You
Thank
Guy,
you.
and Guy is going to join us next week. He's going to be our featured speaker. And Dr. Gary, you had something that you wanted to uh, say or mention.
Yeah, Guy, Jonathan, and Bill, you guys you personify resilience and perseverance. One of my favorite words. I have a question for both Bill and Jonathan, and one part is medical and one part is nutritional. Um, on the nutritional side, I always talk about the four pillars of nutritional and personal health, one being immunity, two being mind health, three being gut health, and four being um, energy and vitality. And I wanted to ask, because you guys have neurologic related um, diagnoses that have affected your nervous system and immune system, have you incorporated a superfood greens drink like AG1, Athletic Greens, which has alpha lipoic acid in it, which helps with neuropathy? I've seen that in my father-in-law's diabetic neuropathy and in many patients and many people. It also has probiotics and it also has adaptogens, which improve our physiology, especially in people that have poor appetite or appetite issues or having difficulty getting enough nutrition during chemotherapy or appetite suppressing regimens. So my one question was, have you explored that or would you be interested? I have no affiliation with the company, but every day, myself and many friends um, drinkag1.com is the name, and you can look at the ingredients. But the reason why I asked is because the alpha lipoic acid and the adaptogens and the superfood ingredients of that are very nourishing to the body, in addition to olive oil and in yogurt. So I want to know if you guys have experienced that or would be willing to try that. And then my medical question is prognosis related. And so you know that there's a medical prognosis that you have heard. Well, my own mom heard a 4-month death sentence. We've had stories of, given the diagnosis, the doctor imposes his own godlike will and says, "Oh, you have 4 months to live." Like with my mom, she said, "Thanks for sharing, doctor. I got some living to do. Bye bye," and lived 2 years beyond that with great quality of life. Um, so I want to know the difference, in your opinion, your perception, between medical prognosis and your own prognosis of your conditions. Either one can start.
You want to go or me, John?
Go ahead, Bill.
In terms of the juicing, so I did juice in the beginning. I do incorporate a majority plant-based diet, so I am consuming about 15 to 30 different plants on a daily basis. And the way I eat and structure my meals is somewhat strategic in the mornings typically. But then throughout the day, I basically just nourish my body with what it needs, depending on how much activity I do throughout the day. In terms of looking at products like AG1, I do have a raw ingredients background where I did work with dietary manufacturers and contract manufacturers for formulations. And I believe AG1 I'm not sure if it's a good product or if it's a perfect marketing company because to have every ingredient within one drink to have those kind of ratios, it's almost impossible to have that many ingredients and hit your dietary and minimum required dosage of that one supplement. Alpha lipoic acid is a great supplement where I've seen great studies for diabetic neuropathy, and I've used it in my regimen of my supplements on a daily basis, just because there's other things that ALAs can do as well. In terms of prognosis, I already knew the prognosis coming into the oncologist appointment just because I came from a background of oncology as well as consulting within the proprietary naming space for the FDA. So I do have that background as well. And with my diagnosis for neuroendocrine carcinoma, it's typically less than 2 years, depending on several variabilities. Um, the stage of the disease, how extensive the disease is, and then location. Just because with neuroendocrine carcinoma or any neuroendocrine diagnosis, the primary tumor will be varied in terms of your treatment regimens as well as your qualification for other treatments. Um, 5 year survival rates for this type of cancer is less than 10% at 5 years. And I'm entering year seven. So my incorporation of diet, movement, as well as mental health has helped dramatically.
Awesome. So in what way do you get those 15 to 20 plant-based items? Do you juice? Do you eat
It
salads? What do you do?
it's a lot of it is just raw ingredients where people think 15 to 30 plants sounds like a lot, but when you think about it,
Yeah,
it's really
right.
not that bad because in the morning I'll basically I'll drink my apple cider vinegar and then I'll put some Himalayan salt and I'll drink a whole glass of water of that with my meds. And
Excellent.
then after that I'll basically get a cup of coffee and I'll throw spices in it. A spice is still considered a plant. So I put
Turmeric? What kind of
turmeric,
spices? Yeah.
I put pepper for the
Good.
pepper.
Yep.
So I was like, I'm also putting oregano, which has the highest antioxidant content of an herb,
Ginger?
parsley for the apigenin. So I was like, that's already about 7 plants right there.
How about ginger with the turmeric and the black pepper, which are needed for bioavailability
I
absorption?
consume ginger with my first meal, which is I eat pickled ginger every morning as well as so in the
Japanese gari
morning
shoga.
I do pickled ginger, I do one pickle. I do a bowl of cherry tomatoes. I do a bowl of kale salad. I'll also do a whatever fruit I choose for the morning. And then I'll also have a protein shake with chia seed, flax, hemp hearts.
There you go.
So I'm basically getting all that I'm getting my 15 to 30 within my first meal.
Fantastic. 100% spot on. Do the
So
same thing.
I started incorporating eating meats again. So majority fish, but I'm having about twice a week. And
Salmon,
then I do a
cod.
lot of I do a lot of legumes. I do a lot of tofu, and that's pretty much the majority of my plate.
Wow, you're an inspiration. Everybody should hear that. Great. Jonathan.
Oh, I'd like to address the AG1
One.
question first. I have used the product being in the triathlon community, endurance community, a lot of athletes that I've known have used it, and that was the way that I was able to try and sample the product, taste wise, like how do you use it? I went through that process, but like Bill, we approach things as far as okay, if you have a certain ingredient that is purported to help you, and how much of that ingredient do you need to get, and how often should you take it? Basic questions. So you have this wonderful product that has a lot of this ingredients that's supposed to help you. So I went into it and compare what's in the product with what is supposedly you need to have this amount. So my conclusion was that, well, if that's the case, you should be like eating or drinking this pretty much all the time, consistently. And at the end of it, I said, they are successful, the company, because I also looked at it as the lens of they have an excellent marketing campaign. It becomes part of your daily routine. And yes, you can say, like, if exercise is part of your routine daily, then that will benefit you. So maybe that reasoning would help with AG1 too. And I just realized that, you know, let's step back a bit, because when you have cancer and you're dealing with loss of appetite, nausea, and you're just trying to meet basic caloric and protein requirements, um, sometimes that's all you can do.
You
Um,
don't want to feed the cancer any more than it needs, right?
yeah, you're just trying to.
Cancer's nourished by nourishing too.
Yeah, so I'm Filipino. So I go back to a Filipino diet is a lot basically plant, vegetable based and fruit and
Pansit
fish.
malabang.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm one of those lucky people who my mom is my neighbor, you know? And the foods that I ate when I was a kid that I really love, all this vegetables like pinakbet and things like that, and all these vegetable dishes that I ate and I grew up with that my grandma fed me, I still have that. Those are all nourishing foods that people have to go to the market, right? And choose the freshest vegetables and the freshest ingredients and the fish. And my wife does that for me too. So to make a long story short, I put more emphasis on the daily things that I eat, just like Bill does. Um, not to discredit using other supplements. For some people, that really works and that really makes them feel better, and that's part of the program. And I'm all for that. All I'm saying for me, hey, I'm just trying to get all my fruits and my vegetables. And like my wife really loves giving me guyabano or soursop, right? And she makes that into a shake, or she feeds me the actual fruit. She even includes the seed in the shake.
What is
And
that?
uh, well, guyabano or soursop is a tropical fruit that has been um, said that has cancer fighting properties. So it's one of those things that, hey, you know what? It's delicious. I love it. It just adds to my regimen.
Great.
So, like being coming from the Philippines and in Hawaii, all these tropical fruits are abundant there, you know? So I have those fruits, and I go to Hawaii often just because of my wife's a flight attendant, and we bring back those fruits. We cut them up, we freeze them, and it goes through agriculture, and it's okay. But I have those in my freezer. And yes, it's great if you can get it fresh. All I have to go do is go to the Philippines or Hawaii, but I that's part of the regimen. Um, um, it's so easily available, like Chico, or I think it's called Naceberry, and there's Star Apple, there's dragon fruit, guava. I have them all in in my freezer. I snack on them.
Wow.
And so I have the sources that I can get to. Now, to the question of the medical diagnosis, in March 2022, I was told that, well, let me just rephrase what the doctor said. Well, if you have pancreatic cancer, you probably have about 6 months. So that's one extreme. And if you have bladder cancer, you may have 10 years. So you, Jonathan, you're right smack there in the middle. You're about 5 years, right? So that was the answer, just like that. Okay, and I think about it. Okay, all right, I'll take that. That's information. In the beginning, the evolution of how I dealt with the word prognosis is just that. It's ever evolving. In the beginning, I accepted, okay, I've got 5 years, I've got some living to do, right? But then people say, you know what? This is a battle. You're going to win this. And then, wait a minute, I'm medical. I was told 5 years, so I'm going to lose this battle. But then I realized the meaning of that battle is in so many different ways in the healing, in the living, and the exact time itself is immaterial. It's all the meaning and the purpose that I wanted to live in my life. And during that time, I came to the conclusion that I just had to live my life with gratitude, meaning, acceptance, compassion, and forgiveness. High values that I really need to adhere to. And we, those are constructs. We as human beings develop that. We make that. And that's what makes our life, whatever your background is, meaningful, a life worth living. And then my wife came along and said, yeah, that's 5 years. You know what? You can do more than that. She had to convince me over time because she walked with me because that's all I could do. We just kept walking and we had started having these conversations like, you know what, you're right. There's what science, medicine can do. Then I started discovering all these other things that I can do. And that changed the mindset that could be 5 years, could be less, but you know what? I am going to do everything that I can to make that further, that finish line in life way further. And whatever that number may be, I am going to be so content that I, my family, and everyone around me help to make that prognosis, not just that 5 years, right? It's much more meaningful, much more purposeful than that. And it's not just a number.
We are blessed, and you are absolutely correct. You are the CEO and inspirational, and that's what everybody should hear. We are both blessed to have incredible wives, Pogi ka, maganda ka, and yeah, it's so true. Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Words to live by. Thank you.
I have a question for both of you, and we're gonna be closing up shop here in a few minutes. So this will be the last questions for both of you. When you got your diagnosis that you had cancer, what went through your mind, and at what point did you decide, you know, Okay, they told me that you know, that you had cancer and that a lot of times they tell you how much you have to live. At what point did you decide to take control of your own situation and live your life like you're doing now, running and biking and swimming and all of that? And so I'm going to go to you first, Bill, and then Jonathan.
Um, it's a it's a complicated answer just because the way that I the way that I think now versus how I was initially diagnosed completely changed. When I first was diagnosed, I was just weak and I was literally just about to die. But literally, right after the very first dose of chemotherapy treatment, I started noticing a difference where, okay, I'm getting stronger, where that's when I started moving. But just because I started moving didn't mean that I was living life to how I wanted. Just because I was just trying to stay alive and where now I'm moving because I want to, not because I need to. It was one of those things where I was doing whatever was necessary to basically stay within the picture, where I was researching at a level where I could give myself a college degree in it. I was looking at alternative treatments where, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, but at the same time, I want to make sure that it's not going to counteract with any of the medications that I'm on. I asked a lot more questions with my providers. The only one thing that I did not incorporate that I'm doing now is my mental health. And if I did that, I would probably feel so much better and more fulfilled where it took me 6 years to get to that point. So I would say at 6 years.
Great answer. Jonathan?
I think after getting the diagnosis in March, I was already looking at it with my brush with mortality in 2007 and my developing philosophy on how to live, right? A lot of people talk about you only want have one life to live like this is your last day and all those catchy phrases. But being a stoic, I learned the art of dying. And this is actually a big part of the message that I've been um, saying for the last 3 years, that living well and dying well are deeply connected, that there's really not much of a difference for me. And what that means is that I only have, um, people say you only live once. But to me, I actually started thinking many, many years ago, you only die once. You actually have a lot to say and do to affect that outcome, that end, or that journey. And that is practice. That's a lot of thought. That's a lot of thinking. That's a lot of reading over the years. So to me, the art of dying, it's not something that it's not one of those things that you need to be afraid of. I think this society has so much fear of death and talking about death. To me, I always bring it to conversations when, even in high schools, when I get invited, the high school students actually have hard-hitting questions like, "Aren't you afraid you're going to die?" from young kids, and then I talk to them about this, and it's not about morbid morbid stuff. It's about how do you actually come into a room and you're young and people expect you to be the best athlete, best student, best this, and all achievements, all goal oriented. And I tell them it's about you walking into the room and you are um, the kindest person in the room, the person who is the best friend, the best son, and best daughter, like being the best person that you can be. And that, if you put that in your philosophy of living, that's inextricable from the art of dying. Because when people look at you at the end of your life, and I don't care much about obituaries and or achievements, I care about how I made people feel. Did I actually make them think? Did I challenge them? Did I give them ideas? Did I make them laugh? And it's about connections. And that to me is a big part of the art of dying. So to go back to to answer your question, like how do you mark the question was um, how did it change me, right? As far as being the cancer. To me, it gave me clarity that I'm about to lose everything that's important to me, all the pain, the suffering, the joy, all the experience of being human, my wife, my son, my mother, the movement in nature that I lovingly suffer through. I love that. I love suffering, right? I'm going to lose that. And it brings me such clarity that these are the important things that I just need to keep holding on. And while I'm at it, I might as well be able to keep giving to other people, to uplift them, to help them. And that's what I'm doing.
Wow. That that is great, a great answer. And I just want to thank both Bill and Jonathan for sharing some absolutely incredible insights in the mind of an athlete and a cancer patient and a phenomenal human being that both of you are. And so thank you for sharing with us at the Cancer Conquering Community. Excuse me. And thank you everyone for joining us here today for this incredible group panel. We appreciate your insight. I think everybody got an incredible amount out of it, and I see the comments keep going, so that's fantastic. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us here at the Cancer Conquering Community, and we will see you next week with our gentleman here from Maui, Mr. Guy Nakoa. So have a great week and thank you so much.